The lake had looked solid enough. Under a sky-bruised purple with the last light of winter, Elena Marsh took the shortcut she had taken 100 times before. Her boots crunched over ice she trusted without thinking. She was 3 steps past the halfway point when the world cracked open beneath her feet. The cold swallowed her whole. It was not like falling into water. It was like falling into something that wanted her dead. The shock of it stole the scream right out of her throat, and by the time she clawed her way back to the surface, her arms and legs had already forgotten how to obey her. The hole she had made was closing at the edges, thin black water rimmed with jagged white. No matter how hard she kicked, her body only sank a little deeper each time. She thought of her mother, waiting at home with dinner going cold on the table. She thought that this was a strange, quiet way to die. There was no pain left now, only a heavy, drifting warmth that she somehow knew was the worst sign of all. Her mind grew foggy, her fingers stopped feeling like her own. Then she heard it. A howl, close and low, rolling across the frozen valley like something ancient, waking up from a long sleep. Elena did not see him arrive so much as feel the night change shape around him. One moment there was only ice and silence. The next, a wolf larger than any natural animal was plunging through the broken lake toward her. His jaws found the collar of her coat with a gentleness that seemed impossible for something built like a storm. He pulled her up onto solid ice with a strength that should not have existed. By the time her cheek hit the snow, the wolf was gone, and a man knelt over her instead. He was dark-haired and broad-shouldered, his skin steaming faintly in the cold air, as if the winter itself did not dare touch him. "Stay with me," he said. His voice was rough, the voice of someone used to being obeyed. He pulled off his own coat, which seemed to appear from nowhere, and wrapped it around her shaking body. Then he lifted her, as if she weighed nothing at all. She would learn his name before the night was over. Kale, though the villages in the Northern Territory knew him by another title entirely. The Alpha King. He was spoken of in warnings, not in welcomes. The last of an old bloodline that ran wolf under the skin and ruled a hidden kingdom folded into the mountains that most maps forgot to draw. He carried her through the trees to a lodge lit gold against the dark. He laid her down by a fire that seemed to burn hotter than any normal fire should, and then he stayed. He did not leave her side once through the long hours it took the blue color to fade from her lips. He did not sleep. He did not explain himself. He only watched her the way a man watches something he has decided, in the space of a single heartbeat, that he cannot afford to lose. When Elena finally opened her eyes, fully warm for the first time in what felt like years, Kale was still there. Firelight carved hard lines across his face. There was something in the way he looked at her, equal parts relief and wonder, that told her the frozen lake had not just nearly taken her life, it had handed her into someone else's. "You shouldn't have come for me," she whispered, her throat raw and sore. "You don't even know me." Kale's jaw tightened. For a moment something flickered behind his eyes again, gold and unguarded, like the wolf was still there, just beneath the surface. "I've known you," he said quietly, "since the moment the pack howled your name. I just didn't expect to meet you like this." Elena tried to sit up, but her body was still weak from the cold. Kale placed a steady hand on her shoulder, not to hold her down, but simply to remind her that she did not need to move so fast. "Rest," he said. "You almost drowned tonight. Whatever questions you have, they can wait until morning." But Elena could not wait. Her mind was already racing, trying to make sense of what had happened. Wolves that howled her name, a man who could become one, a hidden kingdom in the mountains. It all sounded like something from an old story her grandmother used to tell, the kind meant to frighten children into staying away from the woods after dark. She had always believed those stories were just that, stories, nothing more than a way to keep young girls from wandering too far. "Who are you really?" she asked. "And why does it matter to you if I live or die? We have never met." Kale was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire as if the flames held the answer. Finally he spoke. "My people have an old bond, one that ties certain souls together before they even meet. It is not something I can fully explain, and I do not expect you to understand it tonight, but when the pack sensed you were in danger, I felt it too, like something inside me had been pulled toward the lake. I did not think, I only ran." Elena studied his face, searching for a lie, but she found none. There was only a strange kind of certainty in his eyes, the certainty of someone who had already accepted something she was still struggling to believe. Outside, the wind screamed over the broken lake, rattling the windows of the lodge. Elena pulled the coat tighter around her shoulders and let herself, just for a moment, stop fighting the strangeness of it all. She was alive. That much was true, no matter how impossible the reason. The days that followed were unlike anything Elena had known. She could not go home right away. The roads leading back to her village were blocked by heavy snow, and Kale insisted she stay at the lodge until she had fully recovered. At first, she resisted the idea, worried about her mother waiting alone, worried about missing work at the small bakery where she spent her mornings kneading bread and her afternoons serving customers who barely looked up from their phones. But a message was sent through one of Kale's men, a quiet reassurance that she was safe and would return soon. Somehow, that eased her mother's fear, even if it did not fully ease her own. Kale's home was nothing like she expected from a king. There was no grand throne room, no crowd of servants bowing at his feet. Instead, there was a modest wooden lodge surrounded by tall pine trees, warmed by fires that never seemed to go out, and filled with people who moved through the halls with quiet purpose rather than fear. They called him Alpha, not King, and the way they said it carried more respect than any royal title ever could. Over the following days, Elena began to see the man beneath the myth. Kale was patient with an old woman who struggled to carry firewood, always finding a reason to lend a hand. He listened carefully when the younger members of his pack came to him with their troubles, offering guidance instead of orders. He ate simple meals at a long wooden table with everyone else, laughing at jokes, correcting mistakes gently, never raising his voice, even when frustration crossed his face. And yet, there were moments when the weight of his position showed clearly. Elena noticed how his shoulders tensed whenever messengers arrived from distant villages, bringing news of disputes or dangers she did not fully understand. She noticed how he sometimes stared out of the frost-covered windows late at night, his expression heavy with responsibilities she could only imagine. He was a king in every sense that mattered, even if his kingdom looked nothing like the ones in fairy tales. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, Elena found him sitting alone by the fire, staring at nothing in particular. She hesitated at the doorway, before finally stepping inside and sitting across from him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. He looked up, something like relief crossing his face at the interruption. "Of course. That night at the lake," she began, "you said the pack sensed I was in danger before you did. What exactly did that feel like?" Kale considered the question carefully, as if searching for the right words. "It felt like a pull," he said finally, "like something deep inside me recognized a piece of itself was missing, and suddenly I knew exactly where to find it. I have felt many things in my life, Elena, but never anything as strong as that moment." Elena's heart beat a little faster at his words, though she tried to hide it. "Do you believe in fate?" she asked quietly. "I didn't," he admitted. "Not until that night." The days turned into a week, then closer to 2. Elena found herself growing more comfortable in the unfamiliar world Kale belonged to, and more curious about the man himself. She learned that he had become Alpha at a young age, after his father passed unexpectedly, leaving him to lead a pack that some believed was too fractured to survive. Through patience and quiet strength, Kale had held it together, earning loyalty not through fear, but through fairness. She also learned, through careful observation and a few honest conversations, that being the Alpha King came with a loneliness she had not expected. Many in his position surrounded themselves with those who sought favor or power, but Kale trusted very few people completely. He carried the weight of his entire pack's survival on his shoulders, and there were nights, she suspected, when that weight felt impossibly heavy. One afternoon, as Elena helped prepare food in the lodge kitchen, one of the older women, a kind soul named Marta, who had lived among the pack for decades, leaned in close and spoke softly. "You know, dear," Marta said, "I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Elena's hands paused over the bread she was kneading. "I don't know what you mean," she said, though her cheeks warmed slightly. Marta only smiled, the knowing smile of someone who had seen many things in her long life. "You will understand soon enough," she said. and returned to her own work without another word. That evening, Kale found Elena sitting outside on the wooden porch, wrapped in a thick blanket, watching the stars emerge over the mountains. He sat down beside her without a word, and for a while, they simply watched the sky together in comfortable silence. "I have to go home eventually," Elena said finally, breaking the quiet. "The roads should be clear soon." "I know," Kale replied, though his voice carried something heavier than simple agreement. "Will I ever see you again?" she asked, surprising herself with how much she hoped the answer would be yes. Kale turned to face her fully, his gold eyes catching the moonlight. "That depends on you," he said honestly. "I will not force you to stay in a world you did not choose. But if you are willing, I would like nothing more than to keep you close. Not out of some ancient bond or fate, but because these past days with you have shown me a kind of peace I did not know I was missing." Elena felt her breath catch. She thought of her old life, the bakery, the quiet routine of days that blurred together without much meaning. She thought of the fear she had felt sinking beneath the ice, and the warmth she had felt every day since, in this strange new world. Somewhere between those two extremes, she realized, she had found something she was not ready to let go of. "I would like that too," she said softly. Kale reached over and took her hand gently, his fingers warm despite the cold night air. They sat together beneath the stars, two people from entirely different worlds who had somehow found their way to the same quiet moment. When spring finally arrived, and the frozen lake thawed into calm, clear water, Elena stood at its edge with Kale beside her. The place that had nearly taken her life now felt different, no longer a source of fear, but a reminder of the night everything had changed. She looked out over the water, then up at the man who had pulled her from its icy grip, and smiled. "I used to think falling through that ice was the worst thing that ever happened to me," she said. Kale squeezed her hand gently. "And now?" "Now," she said, watching the sunlight dance across the water, "I think it might have been the best." He smiled, a rare and genuine smile that reached his eyes completely, and together they turned away from the lake, walking side by side toward whatever came next, no longer strangers pulled together by chance, but two people who had chosen, quietly and completely, to stay.